Hey, it's Nick. Oh, we got a good episode this week. Highly requested Web3. It's a long one. It's a doozy. Hopefully you can stick around. I think it turned out really well. Also have an ad. I'm going to put this in here. A big thank you to our sponsor this week, Apothecary.
Yes.
I had to bring you in, James, because you are a sock man.
I am a sock man.
They make some awesome socks.
Yes, this company, Apothecary, founded by our buddy Seth Fowler, who you might know from YouTube, being a sneaker YouTube.
We had him on the pod once. Started ID.
Yes. We started designing spatulas together, and he's now co-founded this company with his business partner, Osman Cueto. And so, yeah, I mean, I think the whole premise of this company was to complement the sort of hype sneakers that someone like Seth is reviewing on his YouTube channel.
Right.
And so to create socks that adequately pair and complement these, these beautiful sneakers.
And Seth sent us some amazing socks. I mean, this is really great, James, because all my socks have holes in them. You know, I wear things till they have holes in them. So I got some nice socks, and you got some nice socks, and I wore them on. And they're great. They have this ISO weave, which is it's some sort of interesting woven texture that I think certain areas have more stretch and kind of breathability, and then other areas have more durability, which I think is really nice. I mean, I was wearing them the other day. They're nice.
The thing that I appreciate about Apothecary is the fact that they make XL socks, because it's very hard to find extra long, extra large socks.
And you have 15-foot.
Size 15.
Size 15.
Pray for me. But my prayers were answered by Apothecary.
Yeah. Big thank you to Seth. Definitely, you guys go check him out. The website is apothecary.com, APTHCRY.com. And then please use our promo code. We have a promo code.
Heyo.
Minor Details for 10% off.
Hey.
So get you some nice socks. They have other merch too, other designs.
They do these limited edition drops.
Right.
So you got to be on the lookout for those.
Right.
A great company with some, great founders.
For sure. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Also, feel free to email us at minordetailspodcast@gmail.com for any thoughts or questions. Our 100th episode's coming up, so if you have any ideas or questions for that, definitely email it in. And as always, you know the deal. Like on YouTube, give us that 5-star on Apple Podcasts, follow on Spotify, all the good things. Do them all. And let's hit that intro by KYOSHY the Kid. Hey, welcome to Minor Details. I'm Nick.
And I'm James.
And we're two designers in the big city.
Sweating the small stuff.
How you doing, James?
Just drank my own sweat.
Oh my gosh, you sweated into your cup.
Flicked it in there. I'm good. How are you, Nick?
Doing good. Got a haircut?
Yeah, fresh cuts.
It was getting pretty long.
Yes, it was.
I kept looking at that video and being like, man, I'm losing hair.
I know.
I think someone did mention my receding hairline. Listen, I'm going bald, James.
Somebody said something to you about it in the comments, or
in the DMs,
Oh,
Nick, it's
striking at the core in the DMs.
I mean, my dad is bald. My grandfather, on both sides, are bald, and so it runs the family. It's gonna happen to me. All I hope is that I can grow a really nice beard before I go bald.
Oh.
I want to look like Ross Lovegrove.
Oh, all right.
You ever see photos of him?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I mean, he has that beautiful white beard and just the bald head. Yeah. And then he wears his black trench coat. Yeah. And he just looks like a badass.
Yeah, he looks cool. Yeah, I mean, why not just take it all off now? Just shave it all off.
I've never shaved my head. I should.
In the metaverse, you'll have a gorgeous head of hair.
That's true.
But yeah, what's been going on? We actually skipped a week Not that anybody noticed.
Right. Well, we were 2 weeks ahead. Now we're more relevant, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, we got the new iPhone.
Yeah, we both got the same. Well, basically
We're
the
twinsies
same.
now.
Yeah, twinning.
We are pill boys, not notch boys.
Yes.
Or a dynamic island boys.
Lonely Islands.
I have a beef.
Oh.
I think I had critiqued the beef a couple of episodes ago, where I was like, "Oh, they just added screen above the notch to make it a pill." Okay, so my new beef is, I realized this when I bought the phone. There is this little like divot on the side of the phone, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of weird." I realized it's where the SIM card goes.
Right.
But of course, the new iPhone doesn't have a SIM card.
Right.
It's eSIM in America, and then everywhere else it does have a SIM. International has a SIM, and I was just like, why put a little like plastic door or metal door across and not mill it out specifically for America? Like, if you're gonna go through the whole trouble of making an eSIM, like, come on, Apple, you're slacking here. This is a minor detail we should have fixed. I mean, obviously, I know there's a lot of I'm sure there was a lot of debate in the internal about that, but it makes me miss Johnny and Steve. I feel like they wouldn't have never done that.
Yeah. Well, you don't have. I don't know that I have beef, but I do have meat substitute with like the camera bumps are crazy.
Yeah, because I had a 10, and I went from a 10 to this thing, and I was like, whoa. I wasn't expecting how big the camera was.
This feels like I'm walking around with like brass knuckles on.
Like, kill someone. In the hard, I mean, I do like the hard edge because you can like stand up.
Oh yeah,
just such a monolith.
Yeah. I was rocking the round edge for a long time.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, I had some issues with setup.
Well, this is fun. Yeah, this was funny because my set. This is the one thing I'll give a pro on was, I literally opened the box, turned on the phone, and it said, "Do you want to set up with your old phone?" I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah. And
I just clicked go, and 20 minutes later, everything was perfect.
Yeah.
Didn't do anything.
It's probably user error, but I don't know. I guess it seems like because I got less storage on this phone than my previous phone, there was some issue. But even though I wasn't using all the storage on my previous phone, which is why I went down, because I was like, oh, I don't need all that.
Right.
But then it was like, oh, you don't have enough data storage room.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I don't need it.
Yeah, there's always that extra 10 gigabytes of software and stuff.
Yeah, so I don't know. I guess I screwed myself there, but otherwise now I'm using it. It is so much faster than my old phone.
That's nice.
Well, that's nice, isn't it?
I don't know. That's how I feel about this.
Yeah.
It's like we've reached the pinnacle of smartphones. It's it's just a nice thing to have now.
And the UI, I will again give credit to the UI team at Apple because I feel like they're doing some really nice. I mean, to be quite honest, I don't know what the UI is like on any other phone because I won't touch those phones. I won't get within 5 feet of anybody using them.
No friends with green bubbles, never.
Yeah. But I don't know what the UI is like, but I think the Apple UI has gotten a lot better. Like all the notifications now, instead of popping up in the middle of the screen, they pop up towards the bottom of the screen, which is a more clickable region. And the dynamic island is a really interesting way to give you more information. I just feel like it's a bit more playful than it used to be. It used to be very just straightforward and plain.
There's those subtle animations.
Yeah, I feel like it's, I don't know.
I saw a
delightful.
Meme. I saw a meme like that the other day that was imagine getting hired as a UI person at Apple and spending 2 years working on the animation for the dynamic island when you press the play button or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is, right? They got, thousands of people.
Did you ever, there was this series on Netflix. I mean, it still is probably called The Movies That Made Us. And one of them is about Jurassic Park, the first movie. And there's this animator in it who's talking about the amount of work that he put into just the T-Rex animation. And he's like, I went through a divorce, lost custody. He just outline. All it is like just so I could get the pinky right, whatever.
Only
It's
shown
just
on
like
screen for like 30 seconds.
yeah. Just a madman. But yeah, I wonder like the tortures that some of our design brethren or whoever have to go through just to get that little thing right, because it turns out to be really difficult, like both politically and just like executionally.
Yeah. You had some more thoughts on meme design, right?
I did. So I was thinking about, we got into that Cybertruck conversation, and you were talking about like how a meme is about the core essence of an idea. And one of the things that I brought up was that like the Cybertruck is like this second grader's version of a truck. Like it's so easy, but that's actually like strategically, in terms of being able to be shareable and also like memeable, the idea that like you can capture the essence of something with just like a few lines, it also contributes to like the shareability and memeability of something. Because like I remember listening to this podcast with Michael Beirut from Pentagram. He's a graphic designer, and he was talking about, he did the Hillary Clinton campaign graphics for 2016, and one of them was that H with the little arrow, which got memed itself because it was like a red arrow going to the right, like stuff like that. But he was talking about how the prompt for that logo design was that a second grader or who like a young kid could make that out of construction paper.
Oh, interesting.
And so like I think that is like maybe also part of the like memeability, shareability of something, is like that a kid sitting in class from a young age could like be drawing a Cybertruck in like the margins of their notes, that it's that simple to capture it.
That's a good point. I mean, I would agree that there are many meme design objects out there that feel iconic in that way, where it's only a few lines drawn.
Yeah. I don't know that it doesn't capture the whole thing, but it captures a part of it.
Right. I think what I think about is I go to product silhouettes. Like when you design a product and you make a silhouette, like if you turn that design into a silhouette, is that silhouette instantly recognizable? Like like a Coca-Cola bottle, right? Like that could be just a black, outline against a white background, and everyone knows what it is.
Yeah.
And same with the Cybertruck,
Yeah.
And I think you could probably throw in like some Eames chairs into that too.
Yeah, totally. And the other thing that we didn't mention that I do remember vividly from the AirPod Pro release is how everybody was saying it looked like Bellsprout from Pokemon.
Oh, yeah.
And I just like...
Pokemon also has the silhouette, when it's like, who's that Pokemon? And it's a black silhouette,
But that's like, I don't know, that's another thing of just like, it's such like a ludicrous, like crazy, weird, like connection to draw, which makes it memeable.
Well, I think too, it also plays on this fact that there's always that hint of familiarity to designs that we like. And, I guess that goes back to Raymond Loewy's most advanced yet acceptable principle, where like you have to have some bit of familiarity, but also some newness.
But it's like the familiarity of consumer electronic to a Pokemon.
Well, because like, Pokemons are pretty iconic themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
But that's what makes it even more memeable.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, that was just like, because I was just like thinking, I was just envisioning like actual second graders drawing Cybertrucks, and like that being like an entry point for them to be able to like represent something that's like, I don't know, because it's not so easy to do that with any kind of car, but to be able to be like, yeah, I got this cool Cybertruck drawing. You want to check it out? I don't know how second graders talk anymore. That's probably more like a fifth grader.
I don't know.
But anyway, so Yeah, that was it.
We got some new, I guess, Kickstarter releases, product releases.
Oh yeah,
Some
some
stuff.
cool ones this
Cool
week.
stuff coming through.
Some friends,
Some products.
some future friends.
Product podcast. We got to talk about products, you know?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we wanted to shout out Derek Cassio, who was an interviewee on our podcast.
Yeah.
Great guy. He launched this Kickstarter for a vitamin electrolyte drink called Thirst Burster.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the Kickstarter video because it's like,
retro wave.
It's very
80s synth wave.
total 80s vibes.
I love it.
Nick wouldn't understand this,
Well,
but our other audience members might see some similarities between the Kickstarter video and Terminator, the first movie.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Yeah, so in the first movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger shows up in a bolt, like multiple bolts of lightning as he travels back in time.
Oh, Back to the Future. I've seen that one.
There's no
Similar?
DeLorean.
Oh, okay.
There's no Cybertruck.
Okay.
Yeah, it's there's a little homage to it there. But yeah, always love to support friends and their endeavors.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you haven't checked it out, check it out, Thirst Burster.
Yeah. Yeah, we should get him on the pod again because I know he's pivoted to more business stuff.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship.
Yeah,
this is one of his endeavors. He has several.
Yeah, he's no longer teaching, but he's I don't know, he's creating some memes there.
Yeah.
But
another Kickstarter.
There is another Kickstarter, Ugmonk.
Yeah.
So Ugmonk is a brand out of Doylestown, Pennsylvania, which is exciting to me because it's literally 20 minutes from where I grew up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I've been following Ugmonk for a while, somewhat based on that, but also I just, I love what they've been doing. I think he started out mostly with graphic tees. He's a graphic designer by training. But then he got into physical products. The first one he did was the first version of Gather, which was sort of this wood block with these milled slots in it, and then these plastic pieces that had metal prongs.
It was like a to-do list.
No, that's
accessory thing.
That's his other product.
Okay.
That's Analog.
Okay.
Gather is more just there's a thing that can go in that's for your phone or for Post-it notes. There's these little just plastic pieces that can help you with desk organization basically on your desktop, and just creates content for desk goals, right. Organization goals.
Yeah. All over Pinterest. Yeah.
And then Analog, and that was a pretty successful Kickstarter. I remember when that happened and being oh, that's cool. And I think that's when I discovered that he was doing it all in Pennsylvania. But then Analog is his to-do list system. Another really beautiful little milled piece of wood. It's got a slot in it for to-do list, but there's a whole system that he developed around it.
Yeah.
That was also very successful, and now he's within 1 hour fully funded his newest Kickstarter, which is the follow-up to Gather, which is a new collection. This time it's more, it's a broader system in some ways, and
it's a laptop stand. There's a monitor stand,
and he's brought in there's no, I don't think that there are any plastic pieces in the original Gather. I think most of it is either wood or sheet metal, and then there's felt accents in there. But it's really nice. It's a really nice collection.
Very clean, modern.
Yeah. I know that he designed the set with Jack Marple of Orchestra Studio. So
yeah, they did a great job.
Just really nice, really, really solid.
There's
set.
I think the one that I liked was the Post-it note holder.
Oh yeah,
because it was just a metal tray, simple bent metal tray with I think a felt liner in the bottom, but 4 walls folded up, and then the front wall has a little cutout so you can reach your thumb in to pull a Post-it note out.
Yeah.
But I will say, you always should peel Post-it notes from the side, because if you pull them straight up, then they curl when you put stick on stuff.
Oh, minor
But,
details.
Yeah, minor detail.
Well, I guess you could orient
yeah,
it.
you could like twist it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Little secret for you, Jeff Sheldon, a bug monk. Yeah, just like I just love that now that we are in the social media world and everything, that it doesn't require people being in like city centers or anything to create like new, influential, beautiful product. And he's doing it all with like local vendors. I think because he's in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of Amish. And so like he's working with Amish people for like some, I think mostly for the wood stuff, but it could be for the metal stuff as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's, I think too, I mean, this could be a whole episode, but just this idea of going back to local manufacturing.
Yeah.
Both because I think a lot of people became very clear during the pandemic, like, oh, this is kind of important to have things local. And then also it's just nice to have more control over the final quality and stuff. You know?
Totally. So yeah, check that out as well. Kickstarter's lighting up this week.
Yeah. What, you got another product, or we want to do design news, or what we got going on?
Oh, I just wanted to mention because this is another company. I feel like this company is currently almost like the teenage engineering of coffee. Like they have released a lot of product that I feel like gets probably a lot of ID love.
Yeah.
Which is Fellow,
right?
That brand. And so they, I feel like their most iconic product is the product that they just like launched this pro version of, which is the Stag Kettle,
right?
Which is that it has that iconic handle, like the sort of like branching out, blending handle. I know
it's that surfacing. It's that G3 surfacing. Gets all the designers.
Well, I have a subtle complaint because they don't have the G3.
No, there's no G3 on the handle. What? We got to call up. We got to call up the CEO right now.
Only the wood handle. The wood handle doesn't have the same issue as far as I can tell.
Because it's sanded.
Yeah, but I think the plastic handle, you can see sort of like the edges of the rounds.
Oh man.
But I still like, it doesn't bother me too much.
It's still a beautiful product.
I think they're beautiful products. I think I have the original Stag Kettle, and then I also have the Ode grinder.
Yeah.
Because I'm an AeroPress boy now, and so I do this whole routine in the morning: heat up the kettle, grind the beans. Actually, my daughter helps me out. She like presses the button to grind the beans.
Yeah, that's fun.
I'm trying to like, while I'm simultaneously teaching her how to do key shot, I'm also teaching her how to make coffee.
She's gonna be a good intern one day.
Yeah, I need, just trying to delineate tasks. Delegate.
Do you give Clara coffee?
No.
Okay.
No, but we
that
give
sounds
her
illegal, but I don't know.
Sometimes we give her like frothed milk, and we tell her it's a Clara cappuccino.
Yeah.
No, there's actually a funny story. My brother-in-law and his wife, they give they would give frothed milk to their kid.
Yeah.
But they called it coffee. And we were in LA outside of a Blue Bottle, like we had all ordered.
Yeah.
And it was taking a long time. And his 2-year-old son was going, I want coffee. I want my coffee. And it was just like, oh God, his child service is going to come right now. Like, he was also just like...
Just a 2-year-old going through coffee withdrawals, caffeine withdrawals.
He was also just like embodying all like the frustration that all of us had because for whatever reason, this Blue Bottle took forever to make coffee.
Man.
Like, it was just unreasonable.
They're on LA time,
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so Fellow just released the pro version of their kettle, which, as far as I can tell, they did some upgrades to the lid. They added a gasket to the lid, which I think they're saying like keeps more of the heat in. They changed the hole. There used to be a 3-hole pattern on the top of the lid for like sort of exhaust,
Venting.
I guess, but now there's just like sort of a concentric like pill slot.
Okay.
Yeah, these are the minor details.
We like it.
I think the spout is the same, the handle's the same, but the other thing is like the base is a lot smarter.
Okay. It's electric?
It's electric.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, so it's an electric kettle. You input temperature and you just say like, yeah, like start brewing.
Yeah.
The old kettle, like the functionality was like you put in a temperature, you have it go, and then there's like a hold button on the back that you can push to hold the temperature. It naturally will hold the temperature for like a certain amount of time, I think. There's also a secret feature that I didn't know about until they posted about it, which is if you toggle the hold switch, it'll bring up a game of Worm on the kettle, and you control it with the knob.
That's fun.
It's kind of fun.
That's the stuff I like.
Yeah. But the new one has like an LCD screen, so like full color. The old one just had more of like a pixelated black and white screen. And so it like you can put in your altitude.
This is for serious coffee aficionados.
You can like set a time that you want your kettle to start brewing in the morning. You can just like do presets for like, this is what I want for my coffee, this is what I want for my tea, like so there's just more features.
Is it
on
getting
the
too
base.
Smart, James? Are our objects getting too smart?
Well, it is the pro version. So like the old version will still be getting sold, but yeah, so that they've just added more features to the pro version, which is cool. I think like the version that I have is like enough feature for me, but I think there are just like some aesthetic things that they've done with the new one that I think are really nice compared to the old one. But yeah, I do just view this company as like the teenage engineering of coffee, because I think, again, like we were talking with teenage engineering, like there's like an excitement that I get around their releases.
Yeah.
Because they're taking a space. Coffee equipment is like, it's a weird genre of equipment.
For sure.
Because sometimes it's like the aesthetics are just like, they might just be rooted in sort of like a tradition.
Like just typical like KitchenAid appliances.
Yeah, but there's just like there's like this sheet metal. Now there's like the Breville, which is like super.
I have the Breville one.
Yeah. I feel like it's the super ID. Like I can see the ID sketch that was done for the Breville.
Yeah, it's because it's
in
got
my
the
head.
angles, it's got the chamfers.
But then on the other side of that is like Fellow, which is also ID, but a little bit more like, I don't know. It's a different type of ID aesthetic. It's much more graphic. It's much more like I could see that this, like they're designed almost in orthographic views almost. Yeah. Just like here's, especially the grinder. But then there's other stuff like the like more expensive machines are like these like sheet metal. They're very industrial.
Like the Rocket espresso machines.
Yeah.
I actually prefer that aesthetic over my Breville aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit too extra, I think.
Yeah.
I would much rather have an industrial looking one than kind of a KitchenAid looking one.
Right.
But I really would like to have the Richard Sapper Alessi espresso machine.
Oh, yeah.
That one
nice.
is the dream. But, that's nice. Like, you find one on eBay every like 5 years. And, they're like thousands of dollars.
I think friend of the pod, Alex Chatham, bought a machine thinking it was the Richard Sapper espresso, and it was the Richard Sapper Nespresso.
That's rookie mistake. Can't get the Nespresso pods. No, you gotta have the real espresso.
I mean, it's still like nice looking, but
it's a beautiful object for sure.
Once you've tasted coffee, like I don't know, I'm such a Brooklyn snob. Okay. Once you've tasted like good coffee, like you can't do Nespresso. Nespresso just like, I'm sorry, I had an espresso machine. I enjoyed it for a very long time, but there's just something about the aftertaste of that coffee that's just, it's just not quite the same.
Yeah.
I mean, they're doing a totally different thing in making espresso versus what is done in an actual espresso machine.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But their equipment is beautiful. Like I love all the machines that Nespresso makes.
Right.
There's some like really sophisticated mechanisms in some of the newer ones.
Yeah, they always have like those levers that come down and stuff.
Yeah, but it's I just like, I don't know. Hopefully they're doing some R&D to figure out like how to make it a little bit better, but there's nothing quite like an actual espresso from an espresso machine, you know.
Can't beat it.
Ground out into a portafilter, tamped out. I get so much coffee porn on
This is now a coffee podcast.
I know. This is like we're just barreling down the rabbit hole of my
coffee obsession.
Yeah, my coffee obsession.
You know what was funny? One of the names we wanted to call this podcast was Coffee and Calipers. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
And then I was like, yeah,
You're
but if
like,
we don't,
no, James,
if we don't do it during the morning, is it really like,
yeah,
we're drinking coffee, and now we're drinking coffee again.
Well, because I think
afternoon coffee.
when we were first brainstorming names for the podcast, we met at a coffee shop.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was, that was good that we did not call it Coffee and Calipers. We're not a twee podcast.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, so
let's see what we got for design news.
Design news.
We got a pretty good design news, I think.
Yeah.
At least it's on my end.
Yeah.
The Meta Connect conference was this past week, and they released the new Quest Pro, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Obviously that whole team does amazing work, amazing design, and I think we pretty much knew what the product was going to be. But I think, it's definitely a little pricier than I thought. $1,500 for the new headset. And it's classic VR headset, upgraded with everything, much light. Actually, I think it's heavier than the Quest, the old one, Quest 2, but they have the battery pack in the back of the headset, and there's kind of a different, head strap mount thing that, everyone's saying the ergonomics are amazing on it.
Okay.
There's no blinders on the side, so it's much more open. It's kind of like putting on a set of glasses. They kind of look like ski goggles.
Yeah.
And then the big thing is pass-through. It has color pass-through, upgraded cameras, which allows you to do mixed reality.
Yeah.
And which is perfect for design.
Yeah.
Because, well, at least for me, I'm always designing things and flipping on mixed reality on my Valve Index to see like a chair in the studio, right?
Yeah,
or like how a lamp hangs from the studio.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a superpower.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I will iterate on concepts and just pump out a ton of concepts, and then I'll scale them all up to 1-to-1 scale, and then put them in the studio and like walk around them like they're like prototypes.
Yeah.
I mean, to do that, traditionally would just be so time consuming and costly. So yeah, I mean the $1,500 is expensive for the new headset, but for that feature alone, it's worth it.
So it has like an augmented reality.
Yeah. Well,
feature.
so I mean, I think sometimes like augmented and mixed reality get a little bit mixed up. In my mind, augmented reality is when you're wearing like glasses and a display is overlaid on your glasses.
Yeah.
Mixed reality is much more when the objects that you're seeing are actually interacting with the physical world. So like the Quest Pro headset, I believe, like has like LiDAR and like understands surfaces and stuff. So in theory, you could like throw a virtual ball and the ball would like bounce on the table or something. So that's mixed reality.
So, okay.
And then it's not a seat.
That's
it's
confusing.
not glass. It's a little. I know it's a little
confusing
right?
because augmented reality, I've always understood to be like it's interacting with your physical world as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's my kind of understanding and definition of it. I think there is varying definitions, and people do use them somewhat interchangeably.
Yeah.
But my mind is like augmented reality is like you use your phone and you look at something through through the phone camera, or you use glasses like Google Glass and you look at directions through the Google Glass. Mixed reality is like there's no see-through glass. It's your VR headset showing you cameras. Or, I guess Magic Leap is mixed reality too. It does have see-through, but it's much more interactive, where it's like tracking the environment. And
so
placing.
augmented reality, you're saying, is like just like purely informative. It's not necessarily like mapping onto anything in your world, or if it is, it's just like very minor. Yeah, I feel like there's two worlds.
It's a spectrum.
There's augmented reality and there's virtual reality. To me, virtual reality is like you are completely cut off. Augmented reality is your like whatever it is that you're doing, it's interacting with your physical world in a digital way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Invite me to these conferences and I will set the record straight.
Okay. Well, yeah, you'll have to.
Because I just don't see enough of a difference to have a third category.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to put the headset on, then you'll understand it.
I'm just like, I don't know. Maybe too much coffee.
Yeah, so that was exciting to just have that new headset. I mean, I've been wanting a new headset for a while.
Yeah.
My Valve Index is 3 years old now. I mean, it's been a great headset, but it's been time to upgrade.
Can I say something? I mean,
yeah, what's up?
The one thing that I will say about the design of it is that I got a lot of Microsoft HoloLens vibes from the headset.
Okay.
It didn't feel like, it felt very similar in terms of ID to me when I first saw it. I mean, I've only looked at it briefly and like not again since. You're much more in this world than I am, but I feel like they also on the HoloLens they have the battery pack on the back.
I've only tried the HoloLens once. That one definitely feels more augmented reality because you have.
I'm talking purely design, purely aesthetic. I mean, it looks like the major difference to me is that the Microsoft headset is kind of. Is like, well, it's see-through and then it has this kind of like partition between like the see-through area and then there's like sort of an encased area above that, and that's all a part of like sort of the same gesture. But then can you pull up an image of the new Facebook headset, or the Meta, I should say? Because I think the Meta one is just like, it's like almost all gloss on the front.
Yeah, there's similarities. I think
maybe it's just that the battery pack is on the back that's like giving me the same vibes.
I mean, I think too, obviously, I think just from an archetype standpoint, they live in the same space. They have the same constraints.
Yeah.
So you are going to end up with some similarities. But yeah, I mean, I guess like they have kind of the goggle vibe. And the thing is like when you get small enough, obviously you have to have room for your nose.
No, you don't.
Well, yeah, you do, dude. What are you talking about? The old quests were
maybe room for your nose.
Oh my gosh, the old quests were just pills, and so now that the new Quest Pro is thinner with pancake lenses.
Yeah, I think I have a bigger nose than you, so
I don't know. Have we ever looked?
We've never. What? Those are some minor details.
Let's do a profile. You guys can write in the YouTube comments. What do you think? Okay.
Isn't there that guy on TikTok that will like use math to like figure out sizes?
Yeah, people's heights.
Yeah. Another thing that I'm noticing is that there's a difference in the controllers. The controllers no longer have that like
tracking ring.
The tracking ring.
Yeah. Controllers have cameras in them now, which is insane.
Okay. Interesting.
Because the headset tracks with cameras on the outside.
Yeah.
And now the controllers do too.
I miss those rings.
And
I like those rings.
Yeah, the rings were.
The rings felt like this is the future.
Rings do feel like the future, don't they?
Yeah. Well, it's like the Tron wheels, or like, anytime you see like a futuristic motorcycle, it's like a hubless, like hollow wheel. I think especially like a pass-through hollow disc just feels like welcome to the future. And then like the Apple headquarters. I don't know. Infinite
loop. Then what else we got? I was going to say, I mean, we'll probably get into this a little bit more this episode, but obviously Mark Zuckerberg is pivoting the whole company to the metaverse, that whole thing.
Yeah.
Which I definitely have thoughts on and opinions on, but maybe we'll talk about that in a second. The one other thing I was going to say is we're being replaced, James.
Oh my God.
They've come out with podcast AI. So now you can just feed AI your audio and it'll come up and play a podcast for you. So I'm going to play this a little bit. This is from podcast.ai, which is a pretty sweet domain name. I didn't know they had domain names that were .ai. I guess so. But this is with...
Google has good products like Gmail and Chrome, but the ability to put these things out fast and iterate them every few weeks is hugely important, particularly for Google. Their search engine is so good.
This was Steve Jobs if he was interviewed by Joe Rogan.
And then you find out that...
It's probably Rogan at the beginning here.
And we have some weird tie, which hooks into the fact that I was a big fan of Gizmodo and I still go there all the time, but then there was some controversy or something.
Well, we always thought it was very funny. We were as surprised to see that stuff as you guys were to see it on Gizmodo. It's kind of a game to us.
It's insane, right?
It is insane. Obviously, there's enough footage of Joe Rogan to create a convincing AI.
And Steve, too.
Yeah.
I think they also downloaded his whole book.
Oh, okay.
So they have all of his...
Did he narrate an
No, he
audio
didn't.
book?
Sorry, he didn't narrate it. But from...
He passed away before the book came out.
Yeah, I think. But obviously all of his, accounts are in the book. So you can play off. And when I was listening to this episode, this is a podcast that is doing all kind. I think they said you can submit people that you want to hear interviewed. So I was gonna submit you and me. What would it? I don't think they would do a minor details episode. But essentially, it's to choose two people to interview each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously those two people are very famous, so it's pretty easy to make it convincing.
Yeah.
And when you're listening to it, it's pretty accurate. You can listen to it and you wouldn't really see any flaws unless you were intensely listening and be
right.
Okay, did Steve Jobs say something a little bit incorrect here? And what it was it? And the conversation will go on and it'll talk about one topic and they'll reference it back again.
Right. Yeah, it makes me wonder. I mean, I think it's cool. Nick, you didn't give me credit. I found that.
Yeah,
okay.
you did send
I
it to
send
me.
it to you. Okay. You're not the only AI boy here. I've got my finger on the pulse.
Okay.
On the mechanical pulse. But yeah, I mean, the thing is that as much as AI could accurately create these things, I think in a typical interview format, the unpredictability of where the conversation will go is sort of the most interesting part. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how much AI will be able to replicate that.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what we were talking about a couple episodes ago, where it's what would happen if you asked Steve Jobs his favorite sandwich or something?
Right.
And if that's information is not written anywhere, what would happen?
Right. So there's
also just legality issues, ethical issues around that. You're creating content that doesn't exist and it's good enough quality where people could listen to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was listening to it for 30 minutes. I didn't listen to it as a novelty. It was just oh wow, I find myself just listening to this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. That's all I can ever say in summation about AI is this is crazy. Yeah. It's crazy.
It's crazy how fast it's moving. That's what's really crazy too.
Yeah.
It feels like every week.
I know.
Well, I think it's time for the big topic. Topic of the week.
I like how you said that in your sultry voice. That's...
Yeah, the topic is Web3 / NFTs.
Oh, Nick has been wanting to talk about this for a while.
Yeah, it's a long time coming. I mean, obviously, let's see. I think just to start off this topic, I think I should say, one, none of this is financial advice. Got to give the usual legal caveat there. And then two, I've tried to write a lot of this stuff down.
Yeah.
And it's such a big topic and a lot of confusing new terminologies and new ways of thinking that it's, it takes a while for people to wrap their minds around it. And it's just a very hard thing to talk about and understand. So I'm probably going to sound like a crazy person this episode. That's all I'm saying. Give me some slack.
What if we did it this way?
Yeah.
Because I'm an egomaniac, why don't we start with what I understand about Web3, and then you can go into your diatribe.
Yeah, sure.
Because I think that I can probably give a good just like intro of like what I understand and probably what most people understand about the technology.
And this is great too, because you're on the outside of Web3. I'm at the bottom of the rabbit hole. And so every time I talk about it, you're like, uh-oh, Nick, what do you...
Full disclosure, when I got back from LA, I went out with Nick and we started talking about Web3. And then by the time we had dinner together and then we went to a bar. And by the like half an hour into like being at this bar, Nick is like, and we're going to write entire constitutions for new countries.
Yeah, and James's eyes were glazed over
just
at
like,
that point.
Okay, all right. But so anyway, this is what I understand like at the total just like core of what Web3 is, which is let's talk about NFTs, right? Because that's a separate thing, or they're interlaced.
Oh, that's funny. I mean, I have it all written out, but
okay. NFT.
What is your thought on it?
Okay. Yeah. Web3 is about creator ownership. Web 1 was like the first iteration of the internet, which was like people creating websites or whatever, blogs, which was, in a sense, like people owned things, but it was a little bit murky. Web 2 was when we have Facebook, Instagram, MySpace, like where we were uploading content, and then that content was no longer our ownership.
Right.
Like we no longer owned it. The companies owned our content.
Yep.
And now there's Web3, which Web3 is about digital contracts, digital ownership, and like creates a paper trail or like a digital paper trail of ownership using these files. And so like the first, like why we ended up seeing what we saw with like the first round of NFTs was just like digital artists creating ownership around their content by minting them as NFTs rather than just like uploading things online, so that if it was sold to somebody, it was contractual. It wasn't just like, hey, here's a physical print or here's a JPEG of something. Like there's more of a contract at the core of this than there was previously in Web 2. And that's as far as I understand.
That's not bad. That's pretty good.
Okay.
So I think the shorthand for that, this is, I guess...
Oh, you're going to go even shorter.
Well, yeah, because there's, I believe this came from Chris Dixon, which I couldn't pin to what he does, but some sort of, Web3 aficionado, internet, Silicon Valley guy.
Yeah.
Web 1 is read, Wikipedia, like you said, blogs. Web 2 is read and write. Writing is now anyone can post to the internet, Facebook, Instagram, so on. And then Web 3 is read, write, and own. Right? So that's kind of the shorthand for Web 3. But yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe I'll start off with a little bit of like history about how I got into everything. I think there's this mistake that everyone makes about this stuff that I've realized. It's been 2 years since I guess I fell down the rabbit hole. And the mistake is every couple of years, Bitcoin and crypto skyrockets. Everyone gets hyped. People buy in. People lose money, and then people forget about it. And that happened to me. 2017, I bought a little Bitcoin on the day it was like the most expensive, and then lost money, which is fine. obviously not financial advice, only invest as much as you can afford to lose. But, and then I just forgot about it, went on with my life, designing or whatever. So when it came back around this past year and things started, heating up again, people were starting to talk about this stuff, I was like, okay, I need to actually learn about this instead of just, off the cuff, just jumping in and, wasting money. And so that's when I went down the rabbit hole of oh, wait, Bitcoin isn't just this digital money, right? It's something bigger. And I think the best way I've thought about it is that Bitcoin invented something. Mm-hmm. It didn't invent digital money. It invented digital trust. Mm-hmm. It invented the blockchain, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's how I think about the blockchain now. Is blockchain is not just coins and people, pumping and dumping money. It's this technology, this invention that has digitized trust. And people also say trustless system, which essentially just is the idea that you don't have to trust it because it's code. But in my mind, it makes it easier just to say digital trust. And
yeah, I feel just with the VR conversation, there's a lot of competing definitions,
right?
At this stage in all of this, because it's, fairly recent history.
Yeah, that's the tough thing too about these things. It's so many new words, and these words are still really, undefined. But the other thing too I think about is have you ever seen that YouTube video of the evolution of the desk, where it starts off in the 80s and you see a classic Macintosh computer, and then slowly the calendar turns into the app.
Oh yeah.
And then the landline phone turns into the cell phone.
Right.
And it just eventually ends up to being a MacBook and a smartphone on the table.
Right.
And it used to be tons of stuff on the table.
Yeah.
That's how I think about blockchain, is that it's digitized trust. And, I think, to give some more examples, if we just think about our society and what we use trust for, we trust our friends to pay us back for lunch. James, let me get a Venmo movie.
We split it.
I know. We trust the banks to keep our money safe. We trust, our local government to uphold infrastructure and protect us. We trust colleges to give us a good degree, to get us a job. And these things, these big trusted institutions, aren't going away anytime soon. But I think a big reason a lot of this stuff has started to become very popular is we can see some of those. You can see some instances where trust has been broken across some of these big institutions. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of why this stuff has been invented. It's there's just this undercurrent of maybe it's better to trust code than humans. So I think that is really the biggest point. If you take anything away from this podcast, it's understanding that, people get carried away with the NFTs and it's it's a silly cartoon animal, but the technology behind it is really important. It's this new thing that, we've learned how to create this digital trust.
Yeah.
And we can go into how that works a little bit and what we can do with that. I don't know if you had any thoughts.
Well, I think for the most part, I think we need to bring it down to how does this relate to design?
Yeah.
And I think the NFT thing both intrigued some people and really bothered other people.
Yeah.
And I remember laying out sort of my issue with the NFT racket.
Yeah.
Because I just felt I didn't understand why are these people, these digital artists, racking up tons of money for the pixelated rocks and what were the monkeys?
Bored apes. Yeah.
The bored apes.
Yeah.
The bored. Yeah. This is how I'm such a boomer. But I think that there was a mismatch between how much these things were going for in terms of like the monetary value
Right.
through the NFT versus their actual quality. And like, because I think that there was a perception of a lack of like aesthetic depth and quality. And it was like, it all became about like collectibles, but
Right.
it was still just like this crazy amount of money being generated. And I remember your answer to me, but I would like to hear it again.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously we can bring it back to NFTs. This is like my one thing though. It's like people are so focused on the NFT thing because it is this like very apparent, like, I guess maybe controversial or like just obvious thing that's happening. But to just review that and not understand what is the core invention and how it can affect everything else in your life, I think it just misses the point. And that's why I wanted to start with like the initial mistake that I made, which is like you just doing the popular thing and not understanding what actually is happening.
yeah.
But yeah, we can talk about like NFTs and stuff. I mean, I think we need to talk about ownership a little bit because
I feel I can sense how
is a hard
many
topic,
ideas
isn't it?
are coming into your head at once, and you're trying to wade through like where to begin.
Yeah, this is also why I've waited so long because it's such a difficult thing to review and discuss.
But this is also my problem with it, is because I feel like it gets overcomplicated and people start extrapolating ideas around it that are just like, okay, yeah, maybe, but what is it right now?
Yeah.
Like what are we looking at right now, and how does that, especially in the format of this podcast, like how does it affect design?
Yeah. I think what's interesting is I would almost argue that everyone already has NFTs. They just don't even know it. In the sense that when you purchase something, whether it's a physical object or a digital object or whatever it is, right? Let's just say like your foam runners, your Yeezy foam runners. A lot of people are buying Yeezy foam runners so they can post a photo on Instagram and get likes, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not you specifically, but that's kind of the culture, right? People buy things to be a part of a group. They buy things to show off to their friends. They buy things and we do all this through social media, right? I mean, certainly when you show up with your Yeezy foam runners, it's like, nice, James. You do that in real life. But a lot of people see the value of posting online and getting, likes and comments and friends and followers through that content. And, imagine a scenario where maybe you couldn't post that foam runner online. And, would the foam runners be worth that much money? Would they be worth $400, $300, right? Like how much of the value of that object is tied to the fact that you're a part of a group that you can post online versus the part that's the functional part, the foam that protects your feet, right? Because that's only like $30 worth of value because you can go to the store and buy Crocs or whatever. So there's like $200 worth of value that's purely digital, purely emotional.
Well, yeah, the emotional part.
Right.
I mean, the $200 worth of value in the foam runners, because I mean, I don't want to like break down your analogy too much, but the value is the design, like the expertise of design that went into it.
Yeah.
And it's not just the materials. But like what you're saying essentially is like you're buying into like a group, a movement. I guess like my impression of NFTs is like as we move further into a digital world, it makes sense for us to have digital ownership over the goods that we consume within that digital world.
Yeah.
And so like if I'm purchasing an NFT, like my skeuomorphic brain is thinking like, oh, I'm buying little figurines for my VR bedroom.
Right. Yeah.
But I still think that there's that disconnect with the cost. And the way that you described it to me, because I was expressing my frustration around that, was that a lot of people who were buying NFTs were doing it with like house money. Like they were already investing into Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Right.
And so the money that was being spent on that was actually just like people who had maybe bought into the system when Ethereum was a lot cheaper. And now like they're operating as if Ethereum is their primary means of currency, like in this world, in this landscape. And so like paying one Ethereum for something like when they have maybe hundreds, thousands, is not the same as somebody thinking about like how that maps out to like the dollar value.
Yeah. I mean, obviously this, why were people spending so much money on NFTs, especially at the beginning? I think there was a lot of people that, had bought Ethereum at $10 or whatever, and then it's spiked to 2,000 and people were, to them, I sold chair sketches and things. To them, maybe a chair sketch was only worth a couple $100.
Yeah.
But in US dollar value, it was a couple thousand.
Yeah.
So there was that. And then also the big part of NFTs is just the speculation, like the gambling side of things, which I think a lot of people do have critiques about and don't like that part, which is complete fair. Like I agree, like gambling is not for everyone.
But I mean, in the real world, people do invest in art or whatever property that's going to appreciate in value.
Yeah, it's not specific to NFTs.
Yeah.
Like obviously stock market's the same way.
Right.
The art world is the same way. Real estate.
Yeah.
But it's not, I mean, I think what also the thing that was frustrating for a lot of people is just the fact that like it's this disruptive technology that poses a lot of risk to, a lot of these more trusted institutions, right?
Yeah.
But we've seen some of that, like some of these, like the art world has started to accept NFTs as, part of the community. I don't know. I mean, that's obviously a critique, and, that critique extends to many places around in the world. I think part of it is, obviously with the stock market and real estate, a lot of that stuff is regulated. The traditional art market's not regulated, which is why, paintings will go for millions of billions of dollars, maybe not billions, but, and that whole thing as a whole. I mean, people can research that if they want to. The thing is most people in the crypto space actually want it to be regulated, because it legitimizes this really valuable technology, right? People don't want it to be scammy, and there's tons of scams. So that's obviously a big critique as well. And yeah, I think maybe to bring it back to design again, like I think there's kind of two pathways you can go in the current NFT space as is. Obviously you could create collectibles. I think about like toy design, where you're doing like Funko Pop characters and stuff like that. I mean, that's something that I've worked on a few projects pseudonymously, which is like under a pen name. And that kind of stuff is design related, and you could do that. I mean, I personally enjoy the physical and digital side of things. I think there's still a lot to pioneer with like how you tie a digital asset to a physical asset or a physical object.
Yeah.
There was a one company, I think you might have shown me this. It's called InState.
Yeah.
I can't remember her name, but it was founded by a shoe designer. We had to look it up, but they are essentially crowdfunding shoes with NFTs. So you buy an NFT, and then later on when the shoe gets produced, you get the shoe.
It's Stephanie Howard.
Yeah.
And yeah, it seems like there's a lot of people that use it as a means. Like, it's funny, we started out this conversation, this podcast talking about Kickstarter, and this right now seems like another means of fundraising.
Right. This is the very tangible right now use case for NFTs.
Yeah.
It's pretty much a new kind of way to kickstart without having Kickstarter, take 10%. You get all the percentage.
Yeah. And like, I also think about the Tom Sachs project.
Yeah. Tom Sachs did a project where he released NFTs. This one was actually really fun. I bought a few of these, but he did physical rockets, like toy rockets, that you get off that you get at hobby stores, and he sold them as different parts, so you could like mix and match your own rocket. So you could do like a blue tail with a, Nike, nose cone or whatever, and then he launched the physical ones, and then he shipped you a physical, and you got to keep the NFT too. So that was fun. So now you have like a physical piece of art that Tom Sachs made and a digital
Where's
NFT.
your rocket?
It's in my home. I got to bring it. Put it on the shelf back here. So I don't know. I think that is the stuff we are at right now. And then, so that's like the collectible side of things, right? Like that's, if you want like one design and then to do a bunch of different colors, right? Like Funko Pops or whatever. And then there's the art side, which, my chairs were pieces of art. Like I didn't like have a physical counterpart to that. It's just like, buy them if you want them. And there's a really amazing artist that I think is kind of pioneering this space, Reisinger Andres, or Andres Reisinger, right, of Reisinger Studio. He's much more, he's kind of a 3D artist, does a lot of the dreamscape renders, much more on the art furniture side of things, where he's doing like sofas that, look like squiggly knots and like,
He's not doing them in AI, I see.
No. But the one chair he made was, I think it's for Moe. I forget what's called, the Hortensia chair, which it's just this big fluffy chair that's covered with flower petals. It's really beautiful. And it started out as a render, which I think too, kind of to tie it back again, it's like he created this imaginary chair, rendered it out beautifully, posted it on Instagram. People loved it so much. People loved this digital thing so much that it became a physical object.
Oh,
right?
wow.
And I think he's just very poised to, be in this space of mixing this digital world, because he just creates these very vibrant, enticing digital worlds. And, so enticing, in fact, that like people create them physically.
Yeah.
But of course, he's sold a lot of his work through NFTs, which makes a ton of sense for his stuff.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I noticed after all this was going on with the NFTs was that you deleted, or at least hid or something, all of your posts on Instagram.
Yeah, I don't think that's related, but
after having minted your chairs, I thought it was related because I thought you were like, wait, I don't want Instagram to own these. I want to own these.
That's interesting.
That was what I suspected.
Okay.
But was it just a part of your rebrand?
Yeah, that's more of a part of my rebrand.
Yeah.
That is interesting. That's a good thing. That's a good point that you bring up, though, because there is this idea that NFTs should be, people always talk about, oh, why should I own NFT? Because I can just copy and save the image.
Yeah.
So that is not the mindset that people who are in the space understand, right? It's more about, you want the NFT to proliferate. You want it to be a meme. The most valuable NFTs have been like a lot of meme people. So no, I did not delete all my chair sketches because I sold them. I still want to put them on my, it's the rebrand.
Right.
So I would also say another thing that I think is really interesting to explore is 3D printing in NFTs, because I think this goes back to this idea of like localized manufacturing and this the owning something digital, right? Because when you create, I think about Boehm. Do you know that company?
Yeah.
We were talking about it earlier off the pod. They do 3D printed objects like vases and stuff, and they just sell the 3D printed files, right? For like, a couple dollars, which is fine and it's great, and people who have printers can print them. but I think it'd be so interesting if you could sell an NFT of that vase design, and then whoever owned the vase NFT got some percentage of the revenue from those 3D printed files. So it's almost like open sourcing the physical, and then the digital is the scarce asset. So that's another idea that's been popping in my mind a lot. It's like we used to live in this world where digital things were infinite. You can copy and paste an image 1,000 times, but physical things were scarce, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't get 1,000 chairs or 1,000 lamps. But now with 3D printing, the physical can, in theory, quote unquote, in theory, is infinite, right? You could 3D print an infinite amount of lamps. And then the digital could be scarce, right? The digital could be the NFT that only one person owns. That's more of just like a thought experiment. That's not really a thing, but it's just something that I've been playing with. See, I can already see James's eyes have glazed over.
I think I'm just crashing off the coffee.
You got to talk about coffee for a good 15 minutes. So it's my turn to be a crazy person.
No, it's just it is
so
very
dense.
interesting.
It's so dense. It's a lot of dense stuff.
It is very dense. Like the only way that I think that this technology, especially around NFTs, does become interesting is like the legal ramifications, because like you can't sue a company. I don't know if you can sue a company if they take something that you post on like Instagram or something and then they use it for their own content. Like, I don't know how that, I guess that maybe that is.
There's technically copyright.
So yeah, what then why do I need an NFT? Like, that would be the most interesting part to me, is like a digital asset. I would have ownership, therefore I could sue somebody for doing the copy paste, like, and using it for monetary gain.
Yeah, I think this is another one of these skeuomorphic things.
I want to sue my way into the 3 comma club. Okay. I'm gonna win a lot of legal battles, and I'm gonna have a nice little nest egg.
Better start minting those NFTs.
Yeah.
I will say, any kind of contractual thing is very poised to be taken over by blockchain technology, right? Like, imagine, this is another idea that I've thought about related to design, is like, what if royalty agreements could be on the blockchain? Mm-hmm. So instead of companies instead of me as a designer, like emailing a bunch of companies saying, hey, here's my designs, do you want to, produce them for a royalty? I could just post up my designs online, and any factory who wanted to produce it could buy the NFT, and in the NFT it just has a royalty contract, and so you just automatically agree to it.
Interesting. So that's just like expediting that process.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem there is that, like, first of all, they would either have to know about you, or there would have to be some sort of like resource, local, like a condensed resource of like essentially an Amazon or Alibaba of like designs that are not produced yet but could be easily produced.
Yeah. So this goes back to the point you're making of, there are possibilities for this technology, but what is it actually doing right now, right?
Yeah.
So like, this is like a possibility. Like, this is stuff that people really haven't figured out the minutia of, but it is one of the applications that's possible, right? Any like contractual thing is very possible. So like a lot of legal stuff, I feel, could be allocated to blockchain instead of, and that's why you see a lot of like, you can take out a loan on the blockchain. You don't need to go to a bank, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You can form companies on blockchain,
right?
Through DAOs, which is a whole other thing we could get into.
Yeah.
I know we're pretty.
Yeah, I feel like most of the arguments that I've heard around blockchain are just like on like sort of the libertarian side of things, where it's like, it's not regulated, it's decentralized. Like, these things,
it is decentralized.
These things are important for like the future of people to be independent from institutions, like to not have to rely on an institution like a bank
Right.
that could essentially decide whether they might want to do business with you or not.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't, it's, yeah.
James, come on, hang with me, man. I mean, so all right. Obviously, like I've been in this space for 2 years.
You're an evangelist.
I'm passionate about it. Yes.
Yeah.
I am. I try not to evangelize too much. Obviously, I understand there's a lot of issues with it still, but it, to me, it feels like our .com moment, right?
Right.
I wasn't around when the .com bubble was around. I wasn't around when the 80s, 70s like computer stuff was happening, right?
Yeah.
It just feels like it's this exciting new technology that, is coincidentally poised for creators this time around, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess the only optimism that I can take from it is that it seems to be almost to juxtapose it against the AI conversation,
Right.
where creators are coming, like in the digital age, are like under threat in some way. Like it feels like NFT, maybe the blockchain is like a small defense.
That's interesting.
Against that.
I never thought about it that way.
Because like the thing about AI that I think that we've talked about is like, in order to get AI trained, you have to train it off of content. You have to like in order for it to produce design work,
right,
it's got to be trained off of prior design work. But if that design work is now NFT, like contractual owned, like could that be a defense against AI being able to take intellectual property and use that to create new things?
I mean, not really, but
that's going to be, you brought that up in this episode, that's going to be a thing. Like the whole idea that AI, like there's definitely some legality issues around ownership within the AI conversation.
right.
And so like that's where my mind has like arrived at through this whole conversation.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe that's a leap.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing, maybe to just like wrap this up, is like, it is a very broad industry, a broad topic. It's so hard to just put it all into one podcast, especially from someone who like has only been in this space for like a year and a half or 2 years. And, I know a lot, but I am by no means an expert. So, and definitely, it's definitely a lot easier for me to talk about design than it is Web3.
Yeah.
So it's been, I had to get it out there because I know I just get so many messages of like, what are your thoughts on it? How do you, what are you doing in the space? What do you think about it? And as you can hear through this podcast, it's not something I can just type out easily,
Yeah. Well, I will say this in summation.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the computer era, like the beginnings of computers,
right,
was sort of this like intangible, like anything is possible, like imagine a future sort of thing. But it wasn't until things like the Mac that came along and made it accessible to the like population that we really understood like, oh, like this is what computers can mean for us and like our future. And I feel like the accessible moment so far for Web3 has been NFTs, but for the most part, I mean, maybe the first computers were as divisive, but I feel like it was very divisive.
Yeah.
There was the aesthetics of the things, which made it difficult to understand, and the price of those things. And then there was this whole like environmental argument that was happening.
I will say, I'm not going to go into this, but the environmental stuff has been fixed. So no worries anymore. The argument's null.
I mean, I might be like totally torching myself here, but I didn't even understand the environmental arguments to begin with, because people were saying that Bitcoin, because of like what it was taking to mine servers, that Bitcoin was like contributing the amount of CO2 as like a small country. But my question back to that is like, what industry isn't? like I'm sure that on the scale of other industries, Bitcoin was like a small percentage of that.
Well,
It felt like a very strange argument to me. And also like, it's one of those arguments that I feel like people get annoyed about with conservatives when they talk about like renewable energies, where conservatives are like, the renewable energies are not as efficient as they could be. They're not as reliable as they could be. And it's like, we're talking about technologies in their infancy.
Yeah.
Like, let's give it a little bit of time to like optimize. And so like, that's kind of how I felt about that conversation, was like, this feels like a really like, it feels like a swing and a miss to me in terms of like a legitimate critique against this technology.
Right. Well, I think with any new technology, especially this stuff where it's a big shift, it's a big change. I don't want to say threaten, but you can see how like there are some institutions that wouldn't want to be replaced by code, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe they have more power than code, right? They like to have the power, right? And so a lot of those conversations and critiques really stem, I think, from that core, feeling of, wait, this stuff is a little scary. You know? And that's the thing with like computers or any technology, right? The internet came out, like what you were saying. It's like, this stuff is unknown. Same with AI. It's scary. And so we're a little bit afraid of it.
Yeah.
And, maybe it could take a while before it catches on. I don't think Web3 as a technology is going away anytime soon. I think, maybe the speculation, the dumb, silly, monkey JPEGs are going to go away. But, I think, in 10 years from now, we'll be like, everyone will just have NFTs commonplace like we have, social media or the internet, right? It's just going to be the de facto thing. It's like, oh, yeah, I have an email. I also have a, crypto wallet.
Right. Yeah, I think it's just modernity. Like modernity is a very hard thing to assess when you're in the midst of it and you're in the midst of innovation, because like you're not going to understand the benefits and trade-offs in one analysis,
right?
Like at the beginning of a new innovation. It's going to take time. And unfortunately, there's this feeling like we don't have time to assess these things. But I think like that's why I've like in my life in general, I have started to shy away from like snap judgment about things, because I don't think it's productive. I don't think that it's useful. Like you need to sit with something for a while before you can really assess like whether this is a net benefit or like a net deficit for society, for whatever it is. I
mean, it's a tough thing.
Totally.
But I think now that we've at least opened the can of worms, maybe there'll be other design / Web3 topics or news that we can get into later on the podcast. I mean, feel free, you guys, to send in your thoughts on Web3 to minordetailspodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. If there's stuff you want us to go more deeply into, let us know. I obviously this is something I'm really passionate about, and I don't think, I like to think I know our audience pretty well, and obviously we like to focus on industrial design. So I don't think we're going to turn this into like a full-on Web3 podcast. So we'll still stay the track, but I'm really excited about it, and hopefully, I can try to post more projects that I've been doing in this space, when they happen. I mean, obviously, like the spirograph wallpaper was a really interesting one, because I essentially made NFTs of the process.
Yeah.
And then the reel is like a physical, product.
Totally.
So I think there's just like fun things like that would be fun to talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I appreciate for those who've stuck around through it. Hopefully our listeners' eyes didn't glaze over like yours
stuck
did.
around for this.
James is just squirming the whole time.
Oh man. I feel like I've got the designer fidgets.
Yeah.
But no, it's really interesting. Like, I want to understand about it because I feel like it's the infancy of a technology that's going to be with us in one form or another.
Right.
But yeah. So yeah, I feel like we should, for one thing, we have some questions that have come in through email.
Yeah.
minorDetailsPodcast@gmail.com. If you have any questions. Unfortunately, we've run out of time with this
we've
episode,
definitely got long,
but we will get to them in the next episode.
Yeah.
We promise. And we have our 100th episode coming up.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any ideas for us, let us know also in the email or on the Discord, wherever. And I think that's it.
That's it. As always, I'm Nick.
I'm James.
Peace.
Later.